All right, ART255 friends. I'm just going to go through and review what we talked about yesterday in class. Starting from the editing raw images in Adobe Camera Raw, and then also picking up halfway through how to edit unraw images. So I have my folder right here. I'm pretending that this is my external hard drive. I have a folder on the external hard drive called ART255. In that, I have all of my resources, right, that we've built so far. Artist statement, bio, we haven't gone to that yet, but we will soon. Our CV, edited images for the web, and raw images. This is a good way of like beginning to organize your images. You don't have to do this. I'm not ever going to see this folder, but when it comes time to building your website, it's all right here. So that's going to be really useful. It's something I highly recommend you doing is having one place, whether it be a Google Drive, a flash drive, or whatever, where all of these things exist. So I went to the raw images and I just drug them. I selected them by clicking the first one, hitting shift, selecting the bottom one, and I drug them into the Photoshop icon on the dock. Now I already did that, so I'm not going to do it again. And those images opened in Adobe Camera Raw. So you can open as many images as you would like in one go. They just show up down here in the bottom on what is called the film strip. So here's all of the photos. I'm using some of your all's images off of the 255 camera as my examples, and then the one that I edited in class as well. So I just want to kind of show you how to edit multiple images in one go. So just to kind of cover the raw edits that we're doing in Adobe Camera Raw is we are going to adjust the exposure. My suggestion with the exposure is, even though it allows you to go plus or minus 5 stops, keep it within +3 to -3 stops. Anything beyond that, and your file is going to start falling apart. I'm going to kind of show you how far you can push a file when it comes down to these really dark ones down here. We are determining our exposure based on this tool up here, which is called our histogram. And with our histogram, we want to make sure that these two triangles have a little white square around them. These squares are called your clipping masks. Your clipping masks light up the pixels when there is information that is clipped off of the histogram. So all of these red pixels, they don't change the picture red. Those are just indications that all of the information under those pixels is now white with no detail, right? So that information is clipping, it's missing, it's gone. So we want to be careful with that, and it's just a really useful tool to have on so that we can see in actual data as opposed to our perception of if it is too light or too dark. So make sure to have your clipping masks on. You just do it by clicking those little squares. Okay, so back to editing this photo. Clipping masks are on. Our histogram, the information is laid out from left to right, and you can see this information reflected under the histogram when I float over these areas. Far left is your absolute blacks. Next to that is your shadows. The middle is what is called midtones, but for some reason Adobe calls it exposures. Essentially exposures, midtones, whatever. Next to that is your highlights. Next to that is your whites. You'll also see that there's these numbers underneath there that kind of is a readout of where all of this color information lives the most, right? So no blacks, not a lot of shadows, quite a bit of exposure, a lot of highlights, and not much whites. We can change this by sliding any of these sliders left or right. And so the way to think about it is we just want to make sure that we capture the information within this rectangle of the histogram. If we look at these photos down here, which are pretty underexposed, this is how these photos were captured. We see that there's clipping, right? These photos were clipped as they were exposed. We want to kind of avoid that. Same with this one right here. All of the information of our histogram is pushed over to the edge. If it could be clipped on the other side where it's overexposed, these are examples of it being underexposed. So with that said, we want to slide our exposure either left or right up to minus or +3 stops, somewhere within that range. We essentially just want our artwork to look representational to what it looks like in real life. So I'm going to actually add like maybe 1 stop of light, maybe a little less. Let's go 3/4 of a stop of light to this. We're not going to adjust the contrast with this slider. We're going to adjust the contrast with the next 4 sliders. The reason being is if I adjust the contrast with this slider, I can add contrast or take contrast away. But it's adding or taking away contrast to all four of these increments, or all four of these categories in the same increment. So if I add 44 points of contrast, it's adding 44 points of highlight contrast, shadow contrast, white contrast, black contrast. There's no guarantee, and more likely than not, I don't want to adjust all of those things in the same increments. I want to be able to adjust them independently of each other. So I'm going to bump over my highlights a little bit to brighten it up. I'm going to knock down my shadows a little bit. Actually, I'm going to bring the shadows up a little bit. Make the whites a little brighter. And make the blacks a little brighter. Something like that. If I hit the backslash key on the keyboard, that lives right under the delete key, it'll show me a before and after preview. Before, after, before, after. It already is looking a little bit better. And the exposure, highlights, shadows, whites, and blacks, paying attention to your histogram is a really useful way of editing these photos. Now, we know color temperature. We know that 5,000 degrees Kelvin is daylight balance. That's like neutral balanced. And so we want to aim for that. We want to have our color temperature be at 5,000 degrees Kelvin. Essentially, that's the same temperature of lighting that a museum's going to use, a gallery's going to use. It's just a real universal color temperature to look at artwork. So, this is a good place to put that in. We're not going to adjust tint, but we are going to adjust vibrance and saturation. Saturation affects all of the colors across the whole rectangle of the photograph, where vibrance is tuned into the most dominant colors in the photograph. So this is kind of the first edit where we're like, I want to make this thing look like what it actually looks like in real life, and you're kind of depending on your perception of it, right? Color is subjective. We all experience color a little bit different, but this is a good time to adjust vibrance and saturation to make your art look representational to what it looks like in real life. All right, the last little step we're going to do in this in Adobe Camera Raw is to crop it. The crop tool is over here to the right. This is also where we're going to straighten it. If your art is crooked on the board when it was photographed, this is a good place to straighten it. Now, as I change this, I can tell like, okay, I can slide in my crop, but I can't kind of get it to fit. I can click and drag, but it's not kind of the same aspect ratio. So aspect ratio refers to the height and the width of the rectangle. This is locked to a specific aspect ratio. So if I go over here to where it says crop preset, I can go to custom ratio. Not maybe custom ratio. Actually, let me hit this button where it says lock, unlock it. So it's unlocked. And now I'll be able to kind of just like adjust each one of the verticals and horizontals independently of each other. If this says locked, you just want to hit this lock right here so it's unlocked. Oops. Click and drag to straighten it. I think I might have just locked it again. Nope, it's unlocked. Okay. When I do this, I'm gonna crop into my artwork here. If I wanted to zoom in to see it a little bit closer, I could hit this little zoom button down here, go to 50%, and just make sure that I'm cropping into the artwork, but not to the point that I'm like, drastically altering what the artwork looks like. So I'm going to crop into it. I want to make sure that these little orange boots get in there. I'm not really caring about these magnets showing up in the picture right now. Now, when you're done cropping, you have to apply the crop. It's not already cropped. You just adjust the verticals and the horizontals. And when you're ready, you're going to hit return on the keyboard, and that's going to apply the change. Okay, that's essentially all of the Adobe Camera Raw editing for that. Now, with that said, I'm going to go through and show you how to sync edits between these two photos right here. Sorry, these are somebody in this class's artwork. I just borrowed this from the drive. I hope you guys don't mind. But I thought they would be good examples of artwork to edit. So you could adjust the exposure, you can adjust the highlights, and bring the shadow. Actually, I'm gonna bring the shadows up. I want to make this thing look kind of contrasty. Bring it down here. Color temperature, I want to make sure is right at 5,000 degrees. Perfect. Okay. Now let's say that I did all of this edit. I'm not going to mess with the saturation because this is a black and white, essentially, illustration. But let's say that I want to sync the edits between this photo and this photo. right? So I don't want to have to go through and like change this photo exact the same way that I changed this photo. Let's say that you photograph them one right after each other and you want them to look identical to each other. So you'd have to do the edits to the first photo, which I did here. And now you could go and you could highlight these, let's just say these 3 photos. I'm going to highlight all 3 of these by holding down Shift and selecting the other 2. You could do this to as many photos as you'd want, right? You could sync the edits across 100 photos. But essentially the first step is edit this one, hold down Shift, select the ones next to it that you want to edit that way, go to this 3-dot menu, click that, and hit Sync Settings. All of this is fine. You can just hit OK. And now you applied the same edits from this one to these ones. Now with that said, I think it looks pretty good. We have things like the color temperature all the same and all of that. But now I want to like bring the shadows down, maybe do some adjustments individually to this one. Also, this one's a color image where this one was black and white. This one I didn't do any any saturation or vibrance on. This one I do want to do some saturation and vibrance adjustments on, something like that. I could go into this one, tweak it a little bit, maybe bring the highlights down a little bit. You get the point. Now I'm going to go in and crop these ones. This one was photographed sideways, not a big deal. I'm going to go to the crop tool. I can go to rotate and flip and rotate my image that way. I could go to custom. Nope, let's just leave that as, no, not as shot. Sorry, the aspect ratio in Adobe Camera is kind of goofy. It kind of keeps going back to whatever. I'm just going to go to custom ratio. That's still not what I want. That's all right. Let's see if we can do it. I'm going to unlock this, unlocked, and now I can do it. For some reason, that keeps like switching back and forth. Now with something like a sketchbook, you know, you might want to show that it's actually from a sketchbook. So you might want to include like the binding like that. It's totally up to you. That's preference. Or you could crop into it. If you crop into it, you're going to lose part of the image, but that's okay. I'm going to actually leave it like that because I kind of like what that looks like. Now when I'm done, I'm going to hit return on the keyboard. That looks pretty good. I'm going to go to the next picture, grab the crop tool. Let's see what the crop lets me do. Bring it into there, bring it into there, bring it into there, and bring it up like that. A little bit of rotating. Crop into it a little bit. I'm going to zoom in by clicking the zoom in button. Go 50%. Like that. Something like that. Maybe rotate a little bit so I don't crop too much out. And bring this up a little bit like that. Hit return. Go to the next one. You get the point. Okay, so before this video ends, I just want to talk about these drastically overexposed ones. So if you underexposed. If you made these photos, if these are your photos, you probably want to retake them. But let's just see what we can do with them. So let's just focus on this one. This one is pretty drastically underexposed. It has a lot of shadow clipping, or a good amount of shadow clipping in it. If I take the exposure and bump it up 3 stops, though, because remember, you can do it within 3 stops, we have pretty close to a usable image right here. I actually think that's pretty good. Now if I take the shadows, brighten those up, the highlights, brighten those up, the blacks, brighten those up, the whites, brighten those up, that's actually a pretty good image, right? And so I brought this thing back from being pretty drastically underexposed. This is how it was shot. With just the edits that I recommended, this is how you can make it. So even if these are your photos, yes, you could use them, but I want you to like hopefully get the exposure a little bit better. Let me sync the edits on these ones. Go up here, sync the settings, hit OK. Boom. We have usable images for all of those. Okay, the last step in all of this is we want to open our images in Photoshop to do this, the resizing and the saving. So to do that, let's say that I'm, cropped all these and I'm ready to go. I'm going to click the first one and I'm going to click the last one holding down Shift so that they're all highlighted. If I wanted to only select these 5, I would just select those 5. If I didn't want to select ones next to each other, I'd hold down Command. That allows you to select this photo, this photo, this photo, and this photo, this photo. You can kind of pick them individually. But let's say I want to open all of these, or all of them except for the last one, since these are duplicates. So I have everything selected except for this last one. Now I'm going to hit the Open button. All right, I'll pick up in the next video where this one left off.